Welcome back, F5ers. I'm Lupinefiasco. This is Daily Fab Gameplay, and LSS just released the scheduled, banned, and restricted announcement dated May 19th, 2025, and I'm going to read and react to it live. You'll get my first impressions and hot takes, good or bad, right or wrong. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see every new episode of Daily Fab Gameplay in your video feed. You can find a Fabry link to the Arachne decklist I've been playing in the video description below. You'll also find a link to my Patreon. Subscribers at the Arc Lightning tier and higher will get access to my matchup guides for that deck and all my decks forever. Want to tighten and optimize your gameplay in real life? Use my affiliate link in the video description to buy your very own Codex journal, and be sure to use code LUPINE10, that's LUPINE10, at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Finally, Daily Fab Gameplay is brought to you in part by Hemel from the Bazaar. It's never been more affordable to play in the flesh and blood. Players have been buying the cards they need from Hemel for years. I started buying from him in 2023 and have never found a better deal. The Bazaar's prices are the lowest for singles, full sets, and class sets, including new releases. Pre-order High Seas set bundles now and pre-order singles after spoiler season ends. Pre-orders are available to ship internationally or for in-person pickup at US Nationals in Vegas. Message Hemel on Blue Sky, Discord, email, or Twitter to see what he can do for you. Now, let's talk ban and restrictions. As I said, I am going into this fresh. I have not read the article yet. This is going to be my first time. I'm going to read it out loud for all of you, and I will react on the way. The following changes to Classic Constructed are effective from Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. Count Your Blessings is banned. Germinate is banned. Scepter of Pain is banned, and Bonds of Ancestry Red is unbanned. So, right away, love to see Count Your Blessings gone. It wasn't anything that really impacts me. I play go-wide aggro decks. Aurora could beat Count Your Blessings. Slippy can beat Count Your Blessings. A lot of the time, Count Your Blessings had the tendency to clump up, in my games at least. One of my pro quests in particular, I drew 3 cards in a turn because I had 2 Channel Lightning Valleys on the board and attacked with a Snatch, and my opponent had 2 Count Your Blessings in hand and just couldn't block it. But I do know that for the sake of the meta generally, I think this is a really good call. Count Your Blessings just invalidated a lot of mid-range decks, and it was to the point where if you weren't playing Count Your Blessings, it was just too much of a value loss. And if you did have Count Your Blessings in your deck, it was almost never wrong to leave it in your deck. If your deck was built for CYB, you should just be doing CYB. It wasn't like a CYB switchboard. It's just you're playing Count Your Blessings. The card is absurd. The card's always been absurd. Flesh and Blood is balanced around 40-point life totals, and the fact that a player can gain an extra, originally 56 health, and then down to 30 health over the course of the game is just ridiculous. Germinate and Scepter of Pain is just a big F you to Florian, in particular, probably Verdance at a certain level, but really this is Florian. And if we look at the most recent ProQuest results, or even just ProQuest results for the entire season, Florian has gained over 500 LL points this season. The hero is very good. And some of that recently has been because Aurora isn't here to take wins from him. In ProQuest Week 4 and 5, he's taken Aurora's meta share, but 500 points in the season is just ridiculous. Germinate is played in every Florian build. At minimum, it's an Earth 3 block, and at maximum, it gains 9 health and makes 10 rune chants at the end of the game, which is ridiculous. It's an insane turn 0 play if Florian just manages to draw into it. Germinate is just very, very good at a lot of things. Excited to read what Brian Gottlieb has to say about Germinate specifically. Scepter of Pain, banned for a very specific Florian build, the Stack Florian build that just seeks to play a bunch of defense reactions and generate rune chants with Scepter of Pain, or in other matchups, play a bunch of rune chant generators and have Scepter of Pain. Scepter of Pain, when paired with Channeled Millennium Tree, is just absurd. You get to pay 2 resources, deal 4 arcane damage, make 4 rune chants minimum. If your Florian is online, you make 5 rune chants. Just a very strong combo, and I think that while that style of Florian is not unbeatable, Aurora could beat it with Flicker Wisp combo, Arachne Slip of the Cracks can beat it with good disruption that lines up well against either the wrong defense reactions or no defense reactions. It is just a very obnoxious build. It kind of doesn't do anything until it sends enough rune chants to kill you. Gonna be excited to see what Brian has to say about this build. I don't think the build is necessarily too good. I think there are a lot of answers to it, but it is extremely obnoxious. Finally, Bonds of Ancestry Red. At this point, it's just Katsu. Zen is gone. Fi and Syndra really can't use Bonds of Ancestry. Fi never could, and I don't see how Syndra does it any better than Fi could. So this is just Katsu support. Katsu has been on life support for months now, since he ate the Bonds ban to pay for Zen's sins. I think that having the red unbanned is fine. I mean, for one thing, there should have never been a yellow and blue. I've said this about Bonds since Outsider's release. Bonds should have been a red Majestic. It never should have existed in 3 colors and 9 copies. So I'm excited to see that the yellow and blue are still banned. I don't know that anyone can objectively tell me if this makes Katsu playable. I know a few Katsu truthers in the NorCal Discord who will just go to their grave only playing Katsu, but I don't know that Bonds of Ancestry is what he needs. I mean, he definitely needs something, and Bond certainly helps. So, Count Your Blessings is perhaps the most controversial card in Flesh and Blood history. We have previously spoken favorably of Count Your Blessings' role in our game system. However, it has become clear that while there are certainly Count Your Blessings fans in the real world, just ask our current world champion, our internal team overestimated player tolerance for burst life gain. What some may see as a control deck tenaciously clinging to life, others view as a single card invalidating turns and turns of hard work. I can agree with that. As an aggro player, I have felt the pain of dealing 93 points of damage in a game and not having that be enough to kill a CYB deck. Both perceptions are valid, and if opinions on Count Your Blessings gameplay were split down the middle and evenly distributed across our player base, perhaps we'd hold the line, as the card is not presently performing at problematic levels. However, it has become clear that Count Your Blessings style gameplay has a disproportionate impact on games at the Armory level, where players who chose strategies particularly vulnerable to its life gain are left feeling hopeless week after week. In addition, the burden of Count Your Blessings development is becoming too large. Most new heroes must be put through a Count Your Blessings check. New defensive tool, time to build a bunch of Count Your Blessings decks. Making a new card to challenge Count Your Blessings, more development time allocated to a single card. And all these games must be played against a Count Your Blessings deck that is assuredly looking to play a 50-minute slugfest. The total time invested in the card has simply spiraled out of control. It is time for us to move on from Count Your Blessings in both Classic Constructed and Blitz. We have taken many lessons from the experience and would not categorize the card's influence on the game over its legal lifespan as strictly negative, but the strategy and its mode of gameplay has run its course for now. Interesting. I think that is not the reason I would have expected that Count Your Blessings gets banned. It is an interesting take that it just devotes too much time to internal testing, and that internal testing takes too much time. As someone who's a member of a pro team preparing for U.S. Nationals in 2 weeks, it certainly helps that we aren't going to have to prepare for Count Your Blessings decks and then test that, especially because these long games can have game-ending mistakes happen 10 turns before the game actually ends. Mercy Bickle, 2024 World Champions second place player, did speak about how she could have conceded her finals game against Enigma like 20 minutes before it ended just based on not having anticipated how to play around Count Your Blessings. But you can't always know that in the moment, and so it can be very frustrating. I've experienced the frustration of losing a game to a deck like Count Your Blessings and realizing, well, this game ended 30 minutes ago, but I didn't actually know that. And especially in a high-pressure situation, it doesn't have to be your World's Championship. It can be your ProQuest, your Nationals, could be your Armory that you care about. Having to work yourself through playing out those 30 minutes just in case something happens, your opponent makes a mistake, somehow you draw into a line that you didn't realize existed, can be very frustrating to need to do. But outside of that, like I said, Count Your Blessings is just very strong. It is a damage check against a lot of decks, and I think that having that DPS check in Flesh and Blood is not a particularly fun experience. So really not happy to see, not sad to see Count Your Blessings leave. Moving on. While Aurora stole all the headlines this past ProQuest season, Florian outperformed her on virtually all metrics, only being kept from a similar reign of terror by lesser representation. Rather than let Florian continue on a similar trajectory, we are taking some quasi-preemptive action. Much like Kraken's Aether Vein, Scepter of Pain was a card designed prior to the existence of AMP. While the output may not be as problematic, Channel the Millennium Tree plus Scepter of Pain still feels like too much to ask decks to account for. There is no realistic way to present large amounts of Arcane Barrier against Florian without getting destroyed on the many other axes he can fight on. Add in the fact that Florian is already a hero that can present aggro, combo, and control builds without changing his weapon, and it's clear that Scepter of Pain is compounding the difficulty of pre-game assessments. It can also lead to some truly monotonous game states as players manipulate their deck through pitch to find the perfect combination of cards. I will say, without diverging too much, I do want to read the rest of what is apparently the Florian block, that the fact that Florian is a Rune Blade and has the split damage means that this issue of Arcane Barrier is going to be present no matter what, and this passage to me, there's no realistic way to present large amounts of Arcane Barrier against a Florian without getting destroyed on the many other axes he can fight on. It makes me wonder if LSS is starting to consider Arcane Barrier and how that affects certain matchups, right? One of the reasons that Aurora was so good is that she could present physical and arcane damage, and that isn't anything special. Viscerai did the same thing, and was only held back by the existence of Warmonger's Diplomacy, and the fact that cards like Malefic Incantation didn't exist prior to Rosetta, but that's always been Runeblade's thing. That was the case with Briar back in Tales of Aria, is that they deal damage on two axes, physical and arcane, and you cannot prevent both without significantly hampering your own equipment suite, right? Look at a hero like Zen, whose counterplay into Aurora was playing Tide Flippers instead of Pouncing Paws. But taking away Pouncing Paws means that Zen lost maybe 4 damage minimum over the course of a game because he couldn't just make a Tiger to turn on Chase the Tail or be the payoff for Chase the Tail. And other heroes certainly have the same issue. Arcane Barrier takes up slots in your 80. You have to not play with some of your good offensive equipment, certain heroes. That doesn't really matter. If you're KO playing against Kano, you are boarding out your Scaling Flashbag and Apex Bonebreaker to make room for Arcane Barrier. That doesn't matter because the Kano's never going to send physical damage. But against a hero like Aurora, from the KO perspective, you are needing to make serious offensive, what's the word I'm looking for? Consolations, appeasements, compromises is the one, to deal with that split damage, or you're choosing to ignore it, and now you're just dying and you can't stop it. So I may be totally wrong, maybe it's later in this article, excited to find out, but I do think that that particular sentence, there's no realistic way to present large amounts of Arcane Barrier against a Florian without getting destroyed on the many other axes you can fight on, is just Runeblade as a whole. And I'm interested to know if LSS is starting to look at Runeblade split damage and maybe just arcane damage overall and say, hey, that's a problem, we need to do something about it. Moving on, Germinate is probably the card that comes as the biggest surprise on this list. I would agree with that. There are 2 things driving us towards a ban here. First, Florian's endgame feels like it has gotten too simple and deterministic, and it is achieved at almost no deck building cost. Germinate doesn't overtly influence every matchup, but against heroes foolish enough to try going long against Florian, they will always pay the Germinate toll. Secondly, there is a card in the High Seas expansion slot that you have not seen yet, which is both an effective replacement for and a brutal combination with Germinate. Interesting. Given Florian's current success, we've decided not to allow both cards to be legal at the same time. Well, I'm always down for a preemptive ban. Started with Stubby Hammerers back in Uprising with Phi. There perhaps could have been some other preemptive bans later in the game. We did see Zephyr Needle banned in preparation for the retrieve mechanic in Hunted, specifically with Ira, though we certainly could have seen some preemptive bans with Zen, talking about yellow and blue bonds of Ancestry at the very least. So I'm always down with a preemptive ban. It shows forethought. It shows that LSS is moving away from this weird style of game balance where they let the players do the broken thing for a tournament and then ban it, i.e. Kraken's Aether Vein. So I love a preemptive ban. Interested to see what this new expansion slot card is that combos well with Germinate. Interested to see how the presence of what is apparently new Germinate is going to impact Florian's win rate. But Florian is very strong. It'll be nice to see him brought down a peg. I would have loved to see a card like Reaping Blade get banned. That had been thrown out in my circles as a possible ban. A card that every Runeblade is playing, with the exception currently of Vincent. But even Aurora was playing it in certain lists at Pro Tour London. And it isn't tied to any particular hero, so it will never get LL'd along with a Florian, an Aurora, a Vincent. So I could have seen that getting banned, but I do like that they are tackling Florian currently. Finally, with the ascension of Zen, Tamer of Purpose to Living Legend, we are now returning Bonds of Ancestry Red to the card pool and allowing Katsu some reprieve from the splash damage she has taken in recent months. It is still unclear whether this card has a long-term future in the Classic Constructed format. I don't think it should. But the coast feels sufficiently clear at this point to cautiously reinsert a single color into the metagame. I've always thought Bonds was just too strong. Maybe that's my own bitterness, speaking as a Phi player in the Bright Lights meta, where this big Bonds combo Katsu really started to take off. But it is effectively a 0 for 8 with Go Again across 2 chain links when that matters, talking about Mask of Momentum and Salt the Wound. I've always hated Bonds. I never thought it should have existed, and the fact that it's coming back does just rub me the wrong way. But this could be a total non-issue. Katsu has not been a meta threat for a long time. Will probably still not be a meta threat, though certainly more of one now. And it isn't like Phi is really doing any better with the removal of Bonds. I think the Ninja class could use some help overall. But Syndra's been doing well in Hunted. Ira is still hanging in, so we'll see if this brings Katsu up to snuff. I do think that the existence of Marlin might shut down the Ninja class overall. Difficulty blocking the overpowered arrows, King Shark Harpoon is going to really gimp any Ninja hand. We'll see what Bonds does. As Brian says here, might not do anything, but Katsu certainly does need some help. Gonna skip the Blitz bans because that is not a format that I particularly care about. Same with Living Legend. Commoner. That's interesting. Update to Living Legend points distribution. This is an important one. Going forward, two major changes will occur with Living Legend points distribution. Fractional Living Legends points will now be kept track of in the gem backend to mitigate the effects of excessive rounding. Sure. 2. Living Legend points will be subject to multipliers that scale over a hero's lifespan. As mentioned in our recent dev talk, the Living Legend system is a unique experience in the history of TCGs and one that is successfully serving as the narrative backbone for our entire tournament circuit. However, we can't ignore the fact that having a hero rotate too soon after release can create undue hardship for our players, cough cough, Aurora. Simply put, you should have confidence that new heroes will have an acceptable amount of time where they can be played in Blitz and Classic Constructed tournaments before they move on to their forever home in non-hero rotating formats. To achieve this goal, the following point multipliers will be in effect as of June 5th, 2025. During the first year of legality, a hero's earned living legend points will be halved. Holy moly. During their second year of legality, a hero's earned living legend points will have no multiplier. In all other years of legality, a hero's earned living legend points will be multiplied by 1.5. Wow. The propensity for this new system to create fractional living legend points is the spark for inspiring us to keep fractional points logged in our backend. Makes sense. But it is also useful for preventing us from having to round point distributions in seasons like the recently ended ProQuest Singapore, where the awarded living legends points had to be rounded from 2.51 to 3 to preserve whole numbers. Alright, that makes sense. These updates, along with an increased cadence of bans, should help us avoid outcomes like the rapid ascension of Aurora Shooting Star in the future, while keeping a healthy number of points flowing into the living legends system. As always, we intend to closely monitor outcomes and are happy to adjust again to best serve fans of Flesh and Blood. The next banned and restricted announcement will be published on Monday, June 30th, 2025, with changes effective from Monday, July 7th. Alright, that's a bit to talk about there. Just real quick on this next scheduled BNR. Love that it is a little under a month and a half from now that we actually find out, but the changes will not be implemented until after the end of national season. It's really good. I know Andre Mangucci is playing in the Italian Nationals, takes place on July 4th, so interesting that we will know the bans before the end of national season, but they won't impact national season. I think that's great. I wish that we had known these bans a week ago and just had them take place now. Always nice to have more information. As a competitive grinder, I love to know what is going to be legal and allowed when I'm preparing for a tournament. A lot of what I've been testing for US Nationals is not impacted by these bans. I'm looking at playing Slip Through the Cracks, I'm looking at Marlin, I'm looking at Puffin, none of which would play Count Your Blessings, Germinate, Scepter of Pain, or Bonds of Ancestry, but it is at least nice to know that I can start testing cards like Three of a Kind or New Horizon in Marlin. I don't need to worry about losing Codex of Frailty or Bonds of Agony in Slippy, and it just gives us more time to prepare. So I love that we are seeing ban announcements be published before their implementation, and I'd love to see more of that. So now moving up to the Living Legend thing, fractional LL points, that makes sense. It did not occur to me, first of all, that we would have to deal with half points, makes sense. And two, I had forgotten that the Living Legend points for PQ Singapore were 2.51, despite having read that somewhere. The halving of points during the first year of legality is a very interesting change that does seem to be a good half measure against needing to implement emergency bans. So we can look at a hero like Aurora. I know that Starvo is a better example as a hero who got 1,500 LL points in his first 6 months of life, and had he gone on that track, would have LL'd in this first year despite only receiving half points from events. But I wasn't playing competitively during Starvo's time, so I can't speak to what that would have looked like. I can speak to what Aurora would have looked like. So Aurora receives half points, does not LL in the first year of her life, would not have LL'd 2 weeks ago. She would still be at a little over 500 points. But she was still arguably the strongest deck in the format and was taking down every ProQuest, had a disproportionate large amount of ProQuest wins. And so, having the LL points makes a lot of sense as far as keeping the heroes legal, making sure that someone doesn't buy an Aurora Armory deck and then has that hero LL in 2 months. That's good, great business decision. Love to see that as someone who would like to get more new players into the game and watch the game grow. But the success of that system is contingent on these more regular banned and restricted announcements from LSS and the quality of the bans. So they talked in this dev talk that was referenced about not banning Flicker Wisp, despite thinking, hey, we should probably ban Flicker Wisp from Aurora. And lo and behold, it is what sends Aurora off to Living Legend. The fact that she can beat her counters. And so, it doesn't matter if her points are halved if she's still just winning everything aside from major tournaments, aside from calling Sao Paulo. There needs to be a more consistent, better stewardship of the formats. And we have yet to see if LSS is going to come through on that. This BNR here that I've read was promoted as this big shakeup, this big meta shakeup ahead of national season, and I don't really know that we got that. Count Your Blessings is a big ban, but like the article said, it is not receiving a disproportionate amount of success currently. Having Florian get bans from under him, Scepter of Pain and Germinate, is certainly good considering that he is the top dog in the hunted format post-Aurora. But even so, we already know that we're getting a replacement for Germinate, and Florian still has a very powerful build in Reaping Blade midrange without Scepter of Pain, so this might not impact his meta share at all. And then the Bonds of Ancestry coming back, I mean, Katsu is a nothing hero right now, and who knows if having 3 copies of Bonds is going to affect that. So this is a good system. It certainly helps. Having Aurora LL'd 2 months after the release of an Armory deck, which is now rotting on shelves for the next year, is a huge feels bad and should never be allowed to happen again. But it is on LSS to be a good steward of their formats and use active bans to actually curate the format instead of just letting the best deck run wild and only collect half as many LL points. I have faith in them, but we need to see that faith be rewarded, right? This is not something that, in my opinion, LSS has been doing a lot of recently. They have made great bans in the past. I thought the book bannings were great, but we hear about this Flicker Wisp ban that didn't happen in Aurora. We saw the Zen bans that didn't happen until after he had accumulated 600 points by winning everything in national season. So we have to wait and see. I think these changes to the LL points are fine, but if we have proper stewardship and curation of formats, we shouldn't really need it. So we'll have to see. We've got this next BNR. It's going to be published at the end of June. National season will have already happened. We'll see if anything jumps out from Nationals as wildly overpowered compared to the rest of the format. So far, we have no idea. We're still waiting for the end of High C spoiler season to know if any of these new decks are any good. Hearing a lot of buzz about Gravy Bones as being overtuned and overpowered. But at the same time, if you're playing in the new format queue on Talishar, then you're only running into Marlins and Puffins, from whom we have not seen the entire kit. We're still missing a ton of commons. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think it's a fine ban announcement. I don't know that I would have liked to see more. I don't think this lives up to the hype of being format warping, game changing, meta breaking, but the fact that it doesn't immediately invalidate anything is good. I personally didn't like Count Your Blessings, so excited to see that go. Stack Flooring is real boring, so I'm glad that we don't have to play against that anymore. And if this announcement had been made 2 months ago, then I would still be playing Aurora, so I guess I like it. Overall, kind of lukewarm on this one. Excited to see what happens next. I hope you enjoyed this format of video. I enjoyed making it, so let me know in the comments if this is the sort of thing you want to see more of from me. I think this is a lot more exciting than taking a day to think about the BNR. I know that you're watching this 14 hours after the BNR was released, but even so, I had fun. If you did like this, be sure to smash that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's free, it helps me out a lot. I have a Blue Sky, a Discord, and a Patreon, links to which are in the video description below. You can find my affiliate link for Codex Journal. Please buy one, they're great. Use code Lupine10 at checkout to save 10% on your order. I will be back later this week with more of your regularly scheduled daily Fab gameplay reviews. And until then, take care.